All right, let's take a little trip back in time. We're going to explore how these tiny beams of laser light completely, and I mean completely, changed how we watch movies and how we store pretty much everything. This is the story of the optical disc, from the corporate showdowns that gave us the DVD, all the way to the brutal format war that crowned Blu-ray as the king. So let's press play and see how this whole thing went down.
Just for a second, close your eyes. Can you hear it? That sort of mechanical whirring sound, the clunk of a tape sliding in, and then that high-pitched whine of a VCR rewinding? I mean, if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you know that sound. That was the official soundtrack for movie night.
So, let's do exactly that. Let's hit rewind ourselves. We're going back to a time before everything was instant, before streaming, to a world that was really on the edge of a massive, massive change.
Okay, so our story really kicks off with the undisputed champ of home video, the VHS tape. For decades, this thing brought the magic of the movies right into our living rooms. But let's be honest, it was an empire with some serious cracks in its foundation.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Think about the contrast here. For movies, you had VHS. The picture was always a little fuzzy, the sound was kind of flat, and oh my god, the chore of having to rewind the tape. But at the same time, for music, we had the compact disc. The CD, which came out in '82, was like a digital miracle. The sound was perfect, every single time, on this tough little disc. The difference was, well, it was night and day.
And that really set the stage, Everybody knew digital was the future, but a CD could only hold about 650 megabytes, which just wasn't going to cut it for a whole movie. So the challenge was thrown down to engineers all over the world. Could you somehow squeeze an entire feature film onto a disc the same size as a CD? That meant figuring out how to store 7 times more data. No small feat.
So this technical challenge, it kicked off this huge, secret race between corporate titans. But it almost ended in a total disaster that would have just confused everybody and split the whole industry. The only reason it didn't was because of a very, very unlikely alliance.
By 1993, the battle lines were drawn. 2 super powerful camps had formed, and they were ready for war. In one corner, you had Sony and Philips pushing their multimedia compact disc, or MMCD. And in the other corner, you had Toshiba and Time Warner with their format, the Super Density Disc, or SD. The whole industry was bracing for another Betamax versus VHS war, which, would have been a complete mess for everyone involved, especially us.
But then someone totally unexpected stepped in. A bunch of computer giants, led by IBM CEO Lou Gerstner, basically laid down the law. They sent this incredibly powerful ultimatum because they didn't just see these discs for movies. They saw them as the future of software, of data storage for millions and millions of PCs, and there was no way they were going to let their massive market get split in two. They demanded one single unified format.
And guess what? It worked. The pressure was just too much. By September of 1995, the rivals actually sat down at the same table, put their egos aside, and formed the DVD consortium. And together they came up with this hybrid format, taking the best ideas from both sides. They called it the Digital Versatile Disc, or DVD. By 1996, the first players were hitting store shelves in Japan.
And this number, 7 times? I mean, it shows you what a massive leap this was. A DVD could hold 4.7 gigabytes of storage, 7 times more than a CD. They pulled this off by using a much finer red laser, which let them pack all the little data pits, these microscopic bumps that hold the information, way more tightly on the disc. And just like that, we had sharp video, we had 5.1 surround sound that put you right in the action, and we had bonus features, all on one disc. The ghost of VHS had officially been busted.
But you know how technology is, right? It never, ever stands still. The DVD was king for years, but a new challenger was coming: high-definition television. And this set the stage for the next great format war.
So as we're getting into the 2000s, these big, gorgeous HD TVs started popping up in living rooms. And here's the problem. That standard def DVD picture, which looked totally fine on our old TVs, now looked kinda soft, a little blurry on these new high-res screens. So once again, the industry needed a bigger bucket to hold all that data. And the solution, believe it or not, was a change in color. Think about it like this. If the DVD's red laser was like a regular ballpoint pen, this new blue-violet laser was like an ultra-fine tipped technical pen. It had a much shorter wavelength, which let engineers draw even smaller data pits and pack them incredibly close together.
In the result of that, another huge jump in capacity. This new blue laser tech could cram 25 gigabytes of data onto just a single layer of a disk. That is 5 times more than a DVD, and it was more than enough for a beautiful, stunning, high-definition movie with uncompressed audio, where you could hear every single sound exactly the way the filmmakers wanted you to.
But here we go again. You'd think the industry would have learned its lesson, right? Nope. In 2006, 2 competing blue laser formats launched at the same time. On one side, you had Sony leading the Blu-ray camp, and they had the edge with higher storage capacity. On the other side, Toshiba launched HD DVD, which was a little cheaper to make because it was built more like the old DVDs. Hollywood studios had to pick sides, and we, the consumers, were just left confused in the middle.
So the war raged on. Both sides were fighting tooth and nail for movie studio exclusives, for shelf space at Best Buy. It was basically a dead heat. But Sony had an ace up its sleeve, a secret weapon that had absolutely nothing to do with movie studios at all.
And here it is. Sony played an absolute masterstroke. They put a Blu-ray player in every single PlayStation 3 console they sold. It was a Trojan horse. Literally overnight, millions and millions of homes had a Blu-ray player, and a lot of people didn't even realize it. This was never just about selling a game console. It was about building a massive, massive installed base for their movie format, a base that studios and retailers just could not ignore. And that was the tipping point. Seeing the huge lead the PS3 had created, Warner Bros., a major studio that had been supporting both formats, announced in January 2008 that it was going all in exclusively Blu-ray. That was the final domino to fall. Just 1 month later, Toshiba waved the white flag and the format war was officially over.
So Blu-ray had won. It was the undisputed king of physical media, ready to bring in a golden age of high-def home cinema. But even while it was celebrating that victory, a new, completely invisible enemy was quietly gathering its strength in the background.
And for a little while, it really was a golden age. Blu-ray and then later 4K UHD Blu-ray delivered an experience that was just technically way better than streaming. The picture was pristine, the sound was uncompressed, meaning you heard every single detail with nothing lost to save space. It was basically identical to what you'd hear in a movie theater, and the data rates were way higher than what early internet connections could even handle.
But while these disc giants were busy fighting their war, that unseen challenger was getting stronger and stronger. High-speed internet became more and more common, and services like Netflix and YouTube completely shifted the game from owning your media to just accessing it from the cloud. Convenience was suddenly the new key.
And that really brings us to where we are today. The battle isn't between 2 different types of discs anymore, it's between 2 whole philosophies. Physical media, that's become the choice for collectors and cinephiles, people who want the absolute best, uncompromised quality. Streaming, on the other hand, well, it offers unbelievable convenience and a library that feels basically infinite, all at your fingertips.
When you look back, this whole journey from VHS all the way to Blu-ray was this relentless push to store more and more data in the same physical space. But now that so much of our data just lives in the cloud, it leaves us with a really fascinating final question. When physical storage becomes totally obsolete, where are we going to keep our most important files, our histories, our memories? What's coming next?